ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation and the Belgium Embassy in Berlin, I warmly welcome you to this conversation with the Belgian Prime Minister Alexander de Croo. We are truly delighted to have you all here and that you chose us over a nice drink outside in a beer garden. My name is Jana Pulirin. I'm a senior policy fellow with the European Council on Foreign Relations, a pan-European think tank. I'm heading the Berlin office and I'm your moderator today. Just allow me to quickly run you through today's agenda. We'll have first two introductory remarks. First by Professor Karl-Heinz Paquet, who is the chairman of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation, followed by Ambassador Gerd Leo Meule. And then we'll have, of course, the Prime Minister speaking, giving his keynote speech. He will address the consequence of the war in Ukraine for Europe. He will talk about Europe's future and what we need to do to adapt in order to strive. After the keynote, you will have the opportunity to engage in a conversation with the Prime Minister and myself. And I think we are both very much looking forward to this. But for now, I leave the floor to Professor Paquet.
Dear Prime Minister de Croo, dear Ambassador Meule, dear members of Parliament, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to welcome you all on this very special and sunny day. Today we are celebrating the birth of the political vision of a united Europe, of a united European continent. Personally, Europe Day has always been a day of joy for me, and I think for many others of us. A day to celebrate the achievements of our unique union, a day to reassert our European values, a day to look ahead of what the future has in store for our continent. Today, Europe Day still represents all that, but it also has an additional meaning for us. Especially you young people, and I see quite a few young people in this room, in the audience, you grew up in a place and at a time with more peace, more freedom, and more prosperity than at any other time in human history. Today, this peace is threatened by a man in the Kremlin who has launched a war of aggression against another sovereign nation, Ukraine. With this barbaric war, Putin and his regime are trying to prevent Ukraine from embracing European values, which Putin and his regime fear so much. With brute force, they want to intimidate others to follow in Ukraine's footsteps and turn westwards. With this attack, they have hoped to catch the EU off guard and sow the seeds of division in Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, I think today it is already obvious how wrong Putin was. The Russian president has grossly underestimated the power of our European values. He has grossly underestimated the heroic determination of the Ukrainian people to fight for their freedom and to fight for their right to self-determination. He has grossly underestimated the appeal of the European Union that an ever-growing number of countries so dearly want to join. And he grossly underestimated our solidarity and our unity and our resilience. The EU's response to Russia's aggression was unprecedented, both in scope and in speed. Within days, decades worth of taboos were overcome within member states as well as on the EU level. The message that the EU has sent is clear. Putin has not divided us. On the contrary, Europe stands united by Ukraine's side. We know that Ukraine's fight is our fight as well. We know that Putin is attacking not only Ukraine, but also our values and our European way of life. This is why we need to do our utmost to support Ukraine in this fight. Well, could the EU and its members do even more in this current crisis? Arguably so, and the lessons we will draw from this crisis will make some hard choices necessary. The EU has now more than ever the responsibility to strengthen its institutions and to demonstrate that liberal democracies are best equipped to tackle and to answer the challenges of our time. Prime Minister de Croo will share his ideas of how we can achieve this later in his speech on defense policy, on energy policy and EU enlargement and other matters. In all this, however, one thing remains clear. We can and we should trust in the strength of the European idea and our European values. When we wave our European flag today on Europe Day in blue and yellow, we do it in this spirit. We wave it in solidarity with the heroic people of Ukraine. We wave it for the future of an ever stronger and more resilient union, and we wave it for democracy and freedom to prevail over autocracy and totalitarianism. This is why today, Europe Day, is not just a day of joy, it is a day of renewed European self-confidence. Ladies and gentlemen, I am now looking forward to the welcome remarks by Ambassador Meule, and I am eager to draw inspiration from the forthcoming speech of Prime Minister de Croo and the discussion thereafter. I wish you all a wonderful late afternoon in this beautiful place, which also stands for European values of tolerance, integration and migration. And looking forward to tonight. Thank you very much for your attention, and the floor is yours, Ambassador Meule. Thank you very much.
Dankeschön, Herr Paquet. Lieber Herr Ministerpräsident de Croo, liebe Kollegen und Freunde der belgischen Botschaft in Berlin, I wish you a warm welcome in the Französischer Dom. This dome was built after the Huguenots, who had fled religious persecution in France, found refuge here in Berlin. And at the embassy, we saw this place a fitting venue for a dialogue on the values and principles that constitute the core of our European societies. Values and principles that have been under pressure for some time now, globally and unfortunately also within the EU. But right now, they are under attack. President Putin's war of aggression against Ukraine is not only a war about territory, it is also a war against those values and principles. against the core of what Europe stands for, against our soul, if I may say so, in this setting. It is a war against a rules-based international order, against the multilateralism which we, Germans and Belgians alike, have been actively promoting since the Second World War. So the crisis we are facing today is a fundamental one, a potentially game-changing one. One in which we cannot let Putin win, dictate matters of peace and security on the European continent and beyond, and undermine our core values and principles. It is also a crisis that will definitely change us and oblige us to have a look at ourselves. But the crisis we are facing today is also, I'm sorry to say, a crisis amongst other crises and challenges. I am thinking of climate change and how we need to be carbon neutral in just 28 years. I'm still thinking of the pandemic. And then there are the challenges and developments beyond the borders of our continent that impact on us all. I guess one could say we are in a perfect storm. A storm we need to navigate decisively, acting quickly, but always with a clear bearing. A storm also we need to navigate together as a team. No government alone can do this. Only by joining forces between governments and citizens do we stand a fighting chance. So we need to talk. And that is exactly what the Prime Minister of Belgium, Mr. Alexander De Croo, is here to do. Mr. De Croo has been Prime Minister of Belgium since October 1st, 2020. Before that, he held positions of, amongst others, Minister of Finance, Minister of Development Cooperation, of Digitalization. He also was President of the Flemish Liberal Party. He only got into politics in 2009, so I guess I can say that it went pretty hard for Mr. De Croo. Before 2009, he worked as a business consultant. His first job was in Germany, in Düsseldorf. And then, putting his money where his mouth is, Mr. De Croo created his own company, his own business, and this business is still in business today. Mr. De Croo was born in the 70s. He declares himself a proud member of the 99 Luftballons generation. And he grew up in Brakel. Well, Brakel is the heartland of de Ronde van Vlaanderen, the Tour of Flanders, so I really don't need to tell you what his favorite sports hobby is. Prime Minister De Croo has a very keen interest in all things European and international. He is extremely well connected and informed. He is a gifted speaker and debater. So, dear colleagues, dear friends, I am totally, absolutely sure that we are in for a great evening here in the Französische Dom and afterwards in the Belgian embassy, in the Jägerstrasse, where there are some Belgian beers that are awaiting you. Mr. De Croo, Mr. Prime Minister, I happily cede the floor to you.
Meine Damen und Herren, liebe Freunde, lassen Sie mich zunächst der Friedrich-Naumann-Stiftung dafür danken, dass sie mir am Europatag hier an diesem besonderen Ort, dem französischen Dom, das Wort erteilt hat. Eine französische Kathedrale im Herzen der deutschen Hauptstadt, erbaut für Protestanten auf der Flucht vor religiöser Verfolgung. Nur wenige Schritte vom Brandenburger Tor, dem Symbol der deutschen Einheit. It is hard to imagine a more fitting place to reflect on the values that cement our European project and that unite our European family. Solidarity with people in need, leaving no one behind, while vigorously defending our freedoms. These European values have never been more under attack than today. With his war in Ukraine, Vladimir Putin is brutally murdering Ukrainians, victims of his deranged imperialistic fantasies. He denies them to be free people, to make free choices, to live a free life. And I choose my words very carefully. We are talking about the most serious war crimes in Europe of the past 70 years. But Putin is not only aggressing against Ukraine, he's also pounding Europe with disinformation campaigns, fake news and hackings to destabilize our democracies and turning our people against each other. By weaponizing energy to attack purchasing power and to undermine our prosperity. By abusing refugees to test our sense of solidarity. Let's be clear. We are up against a regime that is morally completely bankrupt. A regime bent on subjugating people. A regime intent on undermining trust between Europeans. This war in Ukraine has pushed us Europeans on a historic crossroad. The choice in front of us is a simple one. Either we stick to old recipes and old structures and Europe will unravel, or we renew Europe, become stronger and more resilient as a bloc, still open to the world, but no longer in a naive way. By putting our interests and our citizens first, protecting people and safeguarding our European way of life. That is our leitmotif. It always has been and it always will be. We can and we shall do this with European strength and leadership. And that is why we need Germany. Because when Germany spreads its wings, Europe can fly. Not just because of the size and the position of Germany, but more so because of your deep understanding of West and East. Because of the strong democracy and the solid rule of law that you have built after 1945. That was my message to President Steinmeier this afternoon, and it will be my message to Chancellor Scholz tomorrow. Germany has learned the hard way that simply handing over power to the majority leads to tyranny. That freedom is also about safeguarding fundamental rights of minorities. That freedom is not just doing whatever you want whenever you want. Not for leaders, not for citizens. This was one of the big lessons of COVID. Like Rüdiger Zawrinski wrote in his book Einzelsein, freedom and togetherness are both defining to human condition. Freedom is also belonging to a free society of others. It is this freedom and this free society that Vladimir Putin is waging war against. He first destroyed it in Russia. Now he is destroying it in Ukraine, and if we do nothing and we do not push back, he will also destroy it in Europe as well. Because Putin hates the idea of people governing themselves. These are two systems colliding. Autocracy against democracy. Autocracy based on a culture of oppression and violence, while democracy is a culture of humanity, consensus, and respect for fundamental rights. It is a culture of debt against the culture of life. For in autocracies, the price of human life is indeed very low. So this is our political mission on this Europe Day, to build a stronger, more resilient European democracy. To anchor our democracy in strong and stable institutions, to make these institutions accessible to all, to engage all citizens in deciding, and to secure our freedom and prosperity for the years and decades to come. And if this sounds wholly unoriginal as an idea to you, you are absolutely right. It is the essence of democracy. The work is never done. There is no end of history. The only thing we have are crossroads that urge us to keep moving. And to keep moving, I see 3 priorities: defense, energy, and enlargement. Making Europe a more solid military bloc is a first priority. And that is not by competing with NATO or by walking away from it, but by bolstering it as a strong European pillar. And to be frank, we are lucky today that President Biden is the captain of our transatlantic ship. But we should not be naive. No more than 5 years ago, the American president was openly questioning our collective defense, the cornerstone of the Atlantic Alliance. Today, Donald Trump might be gone, but Trumpism is far from gone. America First is still very much alive in US politics. And we can simply not make ourselves dependent on who will be the next occupant of the White House. And I am saying this as a strong and staunch supporter of transatlantic cooperation. But we Europeans, we must take our destiny in our own hands. And we can do this. Since the Schuman Declaration, which is today exactly 72 years ago, we have achieved so much. We have built a single market, a single currency, a customs union, and even more important, a community of values. And now Europe must become a military-industrial bloc as well. And to do that, we need 3 steps. First of all, less fragmentation. I think we all know the figures. The US has 4 types of warships. We in Europe, we have 30. And it's the same for tanks and the same for aircraft. And this fragmentation weakens our defense budgets. So we have to turn this around. Second step, we must build a stronger European defense industry, able to compete with global players. If we increase our defense budgets and our investments in military technology, let it be European technology, developed in Europe, built in Europe, and with a European return on investment. Third step, our society as a whole should benefit directly from military investments, strengthening our cyber capacity for our businesses, enhancing military intelligence in the fight against terrorism, providing education to our young people. So the building blocks are there, and we can use military partnerships that already exist and scale them up, like Belgium and the Netherlands, whose air forces work closely together and whose navies are fully integrated by linking a military logic with an economic logic. And of course, we must make all these efforts in close consultation with our American friends. But it is up to us, to Europe, so NATO can finally stand on 2 full legs. A strong American leg and an equally advanced European one. By stepping up our efforts, we will better protect our fragile European values. Because those values are fragile indeed. Anti-democrats like Vladimir Putin use the open and tolerant nature of our democracy to break it, holding mock elections at home while hacking real elections abroad. It is like the Dutch poet Lucebert wrote, "Everything of value is defenseless. Alles wertvolle is weerloos." Our democracy is one of the most valuable assets, and it is our job to rally to her defense. Ladies and gentlemen, alongside defense, Energy is the second domain in which Europe must act. To make us energy independent from the rest of the world, to drive prices down, to drive emissions down. For let us be honest, Europe has cuddled up to Russia for cheap Russian oil and gas for too long. I also strongly believed in Wandel durch Handel, in change through trade, that we could have a win-win situation. But we were wrong. When you dance with the devil changes you and not the other way around. It blinded us. It made us complacent. And if we do not act swiftly and decisively, it will cripple us. Here too, the building blocks are ready. We need to finalize our single energy market to the benefit of all Europeans. More interconnected, more focused on homegrown renewable energy. Instead of buying fossil fuels from autocrats, we should be buying and selling energy from each other. Trading hydropower from the north with solar power from the south and wind power from our seas. If we are not serious about this, we should put our money where our mouth is. If we want to be serious, put our money where our mouth is. And develop a new ambitious European plan. Financed on the European level, dedicated to European projects, large-scale energy investments with a clear focus. A focus on renewable energy, on transnational projects like interconnectors, and on the development of new cutting-edge, high-risk but promising technologies. And let's be clear, Europe should be a leader in this. Germany, the Netherlands and Belgium, we are showing the way forward in clean hydrogen. We should also work together in developing zero-waste nuclear. And you know what? Europe has proven it is possible to join forces. And we did that in developing the COVID vaccines. And I am convinced we will prove it again with energy. Confronting climate change, achieving carbon neutrality and lowering the energy prices as a union. Affordable energy for all Europeans. Ladies and gentlemen, energy is not the only hot topic on our plate. The war in Ukraine has made one elephant in the room unavoidable. The elephant of EU enlargement. And I have to say the term enlargement has become quite toxic. It's been used and abused by anti-Europeans. And I have to say it's also somewhat a misleading term. The flag doesn't necessarily cover the cargo. Because more than about enlarging our union, to me it really is about uniting Europe. Creating an economic union and a community of values with all the people on our continent who fiercely believe in freedom and in democracy. And if you look at it geopolitically, integrating Ukraine, Moldova and the Western Balkans is something we really must do. Nothing would be more dangerous for Europe to just sit still, to defend the status quo and to retreat between our own borders. Our European neighborhood would be turned into vassal states, either through military force by Russia or through an aggressive investment policy by other foreign powers. And we are actually seeing that today, for example, in the Balkans. People in our neighborhoods are looking at us. They're looking at Europe for change, for democracy, for a better life. Let us please not hand our neighbors on a platter to autocratic powers. It would be the very denial of our own values. So the question is, how can this European unification also be a unification of values, of democracy, the rule of law and civil liberties for all? And let's be frank, this is a hard nut to crack. In our current union, we are struggling with this issue as well. And success is not guaranteed, but it has been done before. Here in Germany, there would not have been a Wirtschaftswunder without a Demokratiewunder. And we need to apply the same logic to our neighborhood, being less of a supervisor and more of a companion on economic reform, on the rule of law, on institution building. And above all, we must make clear that those values are not just Northern European or Western European values. They are European values, full stop. That means equal rights for women and men, including sexual and reproductive rights and the right to safe abortion and accessible health care. Equal rights for LGBTI people so that they can be out and proud. Full freedom of speech for journalists, for religious people, for all citizens. The freedom to believe without the fear of being diminished. It is about the fight against all forms of discrimination. Now, some people will say, many of these rights were only recently acquired. All the more reason to enshrine them into the heart of our European project. We fought too long and too hard to give up on these rights, or to allow member states to push back at them. For me, these values are part and parcel of our liberal democracy, of our European way of life, and they are non-negotiable. So how do we get there? In the case of Ukraine, this means linking reconstruction to reform. The country is experiencing its Stunde Null. We have to help reconstructing cities and streets, while at the same time building strong democratic institutions. Like Germany did after World War II. The challenge is not bureaucratic or legalistic. The challenge is a geostrategic one. It is a project of value integration. And it is the single biggest challenge of our European generation. And it's true, it will not be done overnight. It will take years of determination to achieve. Today, we need to anchor Ukraine solidly in Europe, just like Moldova or countries of the Western Balkans. We should allow them to come closer to our Union by enabling their citizens to benefit directly from democratic space and the single market, by having them participate in some of our institutions, by showing their citizens they are Europe as much as we are. Let us take this bold step for a European Union that takes responsibility for its whole neighborhood, actually for its whole continent. A truly inclusive Europe. And for some of them, the ultimate goal will be integration. And that will not happen overnight. But it is our job to create the right conditions for these countries to become part of a political unity of open and free democracies. This European unification will only be successful if it makes our societies more open, more tolerant, and more free. Without this mission, let's be clear, Europe means nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, my reading of the current situation is that it is time to let go of our European naivety. We have to do what Winston Churchill did in the summer of 1911. Change tack. The young Sir Winston was one of the leaders of a political group which called themselves the Economists. And he believed that entering into a naval race against Germany was unnecessary. Until Kaiser Wilhelm sent a German warship into the port of Agadir. The German decision struck Churchill as a bolt of lightning. It proved to him that the German Reich was not out for peace, it was out for war. And it made him change his mind overnight. When he was appointed Lord Admiral, he built up the Royal Navy that would be decisive in freeing the European continent. Ladies and gentlemen, we are past our Agadir moment. Our Agadir moment was when Putin annexed Crimea and occupied the Donbass back in 2014. That's when he started his war in Europe. And that's when we missed the chance to stop him. What we need in Europe today is a Churchillianische Wende. When faced with a decisive moment, we need to take decisive action. The generations who came before us did not build up Europe merely for us just to consume it. They left it with an implicit understanding that we would continue to build it. A Europe that inspires and that protects people. A Europe that shows leadership. We are not used to that. We are used to leading from behind. It is time now to right our backs and to stand up. Stand up for our fragile values of humanity and democracy. A few weeks ago, my Estonian colleague Kaja Kallas gave a speech here in Berlin. She is a dear friend of mine and she represents new leadership in Europe. When she talks about her experience of living under Soviet rule, her face always becomes a bit more serious and her tone hardens. I can tell you, it was not nice, is what she always says. 4 words that communicate a traumatic experience with autocracy. 4 words that also communicate determination. Never again. Kaja, Estonia and the Baltic states prove you do not have to be big to be a leader. It is the power of conviction that counts. And that is the beauty of our union. In our diversity, we find unity. Our differences of opinion do not end up in bloodshed. There is a consensus that makes all of us stronger. This is what makes us attractive. This is why countries or people are knocking on our door to get in. We do not bind peoples and countries to us through force, but through the power of our ideas. And that used to be different in Europe's past. But we have broken with our past. We have learned from our past. We must never allow anyone to take this away from us. And finally, let us not forget, this fight for freedom begins at home. In our societies, in our parliaments too, political forces lean towards Putin and his ideology of fear and hate. Racists and communists. We have come too far to let our freedoms be taken away by conservatives on the far left and the far right who jeopardize fundamental equality of every individual person. We have spent too much time on a social welfare state to let it be destroyed by communists. And we have built too many bridges to let them be blown up by nationalists with anti-European agendas that will make us poorer, not richer. We must not let a day pass without exposing them. But above all, we must deliver. Europe and all European countries must deliver on the promise that we will protect people, especially in these turbulent times, so that people feel safe and supported to spread their wings, to engage with each other, and to build a society where everyone is free and where we never give up on each other. We have to restore that European dream. The belief that our children and grandchildren will be better off than we are. That when everyone makes his or her contribution to our society, we will all progress. That progress is there not only for a small group, but for everyone without discrimination. That is what liberal democracy stands for. That is what Europe stands for. And that is what we will never stop fighting for. I thank you.